Luxury taste is changing faster than the gemstone market expected. Bright diamonds, perfect sapphires, traditional prestige stones. Some buyers are already moving away from them. Instead, attention is shifting toward darker colors, softer glow, warmer gemstones once considered ordinary. One of them comes from volcanic environments. Another flashes electric blue under light, and one has been hiding inside high-end design trends for years without most people noticing. By 2030, some of these stones may look completely different to the market. Starting with a gemstone almost nobody takes seriously today. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Ranked 10th. Smoky Quartz. At first glance, smoky quartz hardly looks like a gemstone destined for luxury showcases. The color appears muted. The transparency feels understated. In lower-end souvenir shops across the American Southwest, pieces of smoky quartz still sit beside inexpensive crystals and polished tourist minerals, often ignored in favor of brighter stones with immediate visual impact. That may become a very expensive misunderstanding, because over the past few years, the luxury market has started drifting away from aggressive brilliance and moving toward something entirely different. Restraint, softer palettes, earth-toned materials, jewelry that feels sophisticated without demanding attention from across the room. And that shift suddenly changes the role smoky quartz can play. In high-end interior design, warm brown tones have already returned in a major way. Walnut wood, bronze metals, cognac leather, dark amber lighting, the entire visual language of luxury has been quietly evolving. Jewelry trends usually follow that emotional atmosphere later. And when they do, gemstones previously considered too subtle often begin climbing surprisingly fast. Smoky quartz fits that transition almost perfectly. Unlike many flashy stones associated with older luxury aesthetics, smoky quartz carries a calmer presence. Under controlled lighting, the gemstone can develop an almost cinematic depth, especially in larger cuts where internal shadows create a layered, smoky glow impossible to replicate synthetically without looking artificial. That understated appearance may actually become its advantage. Collectors have already seen similar cycles happen before. Materials once dismissed as ordinary suddenly become desirable when culture changes around them. What matters is not just rarity, but timing. And smoky quartz happens to align with several luxury trends simultaneously. Earthy minimalism, masculine jewelry growth, darker gemstone palettes, and the increasing popularity of quiet luxury styling in the United States. Another factor quietly helping the stone is scale. Smoky quartz forms in large crystals more often than many premium gems, allowing designers to experiment with oversized cuts and sculptural jewelry pieces that would be financially impossible with stones like emerald or sapphire. That opens a dangerous door, because once major luxury brands fully embrace a gemstone aesthetic, public perception can change far faster than supply chains can adapt. And history shows that when a stone's identity changes, prices usually follow. Today, smoky quartz still looks like something sitting unnoticed in a dusty display case. By 2030, that same stone may look very different to the market. Ranked 9th. Peridot. Few gemstones suffer more from reputation problems than Peridot. For decades, the stone carried an unfortunate image in the American jewelry market. Too bright, too common, too soft-looking. In many department stores during the late 1990s and early 2000s, Peridot became heavily associated with inexpensive silver jewelry and mass-produced birthstone collections. That exposure made the gem familiar, but not respected. And in luxury markets, familiarity can quietly destroy perceived value. Yet something unusual has started happening around Peridot in recent years. Not through auction headlines or celebrity endorsements, but through aesthetics. The exact kind of vivid green once considered too loud is beginning to align with modern color trends emerging across fashion, automotive design, luxury sportswear, and even high-end architecture. Neon greens are returning, not the artificial greens of fast fashion, but richer volcanic greens, shades that feel energetic, natural, and slightly dangerous. And among natural gemstones, very few stones capture that color as intensely as Peridot. That alone would already make the gem worth watching. But Peridot carries another advantage most consumers never think about: origin mythology. Unlike many commercial stones with ordinary geological narratives, some Peridot crystals were literally formed in extreme volcanic environments. Others have even been discovered inside meteorites that traveled through space before reaching Earth. That detail changes how people emotionally process the gemstone. Suddenly, Peridot stops feeling like a forgotten mall jewelry stone and starts feeling ancient, planetary, almost cosmic. And luxury markets have always been highly responsive to storytelling when the visual identity supports it. The timing may also be unusually favorable. As younger luxury buyers enter the jewelry market, traditional prestige rules are weakening. Many no longer want gemstones chosen solely because previous generations considered them expensive. Distinctive color, individuality, and emotional identity are becoming increasingly important. In that environment, Peridot's vivid green no longer feels outdated. It feels recognizable. And recognizable gemstones tend to spread faster online, especially under modern lighting. Peridot reacts exceptionally well to sunlight, producing a glowing green intensity that cameras often exaggerate even further. On social media platforms and high-resolution displays, the gemstone appears alive in a way many darker stones simply cannot replicate. That creates visibility, and visibility changes markets. Today, Peridot is still widely underestimated because millions of people remember it as inexpensive jewelry from another era. But if cultural taste continues shifting toward brighter organic color palettes, the gemstone may eventually escape the pricing category it has been trapped inside for years. And when markets finally reclassify a stone emotionally, the financial correction sometimes arrives much faster than expected. Ranked 8th, Black Spinel. There was a time when black gemstones were considered almost impossible to market as luxury. For much of the 20th century, dark stones carried difficult associations in Western jewelry culture: mourning jewelry, Gothic fashion, formal wear with limited appeal. In many American retail stores, black gemstones were pushed into niche categories that rarely received premium placement, especially compared to diamonds, sapphires, or vibrant colored gems designed to immediately attract attention under showroom lighting. Black Spinel spent years trapped inside that perception, and yet the modern luxury market has started moving in a direction few traditional jewelers fully anticipated. Minimalism changed everything. Over the last decade, luxury aesthetics gradually became quieter, sharper, and more controlled. High-end fashion houses began reducing excessive ornamentation. Expensive watches shifted toward darker dials and muted finishes. Matte black interiors appeared in luxury vehicles. Even architecture started favoring shadow, texture, and restraint over bright visual excess. In that environment, black Spinel suddenly stopped looking depressing. It started looking expensive. That psychological transition matters far more than most gemstone buyers realize, because gemstones are rarely valued by geology alone. They rise when they match the emotional identity a culture wants at a specific moment in time. And black Spinel aligns almost perfectly with modern masculine luxury aesthetics. Unlike black diamonds, which often rely heavily on branding and rarity marketing, black Spinel carries a more natural visual softness under light. It absorbs brightness instead of aggressively reflecting it. The result feels subtle, heavy, controlled, qualities increasingly associated with premium design across the American luxury market. The stone also benefits from something surprisingly important in modern jewelry culture: versatility. Black Spinel works with almost everything: yellow gold, white gold, titanium, platinum, leather, minimalist fashion, formal wear, street luxury. Unlike many gemstones that require very specific styling to feel sophisticated, black Spinel adapts easily across demographics and age groups. That flexibility makes designers far more likely to experiment with it at scale over the next several years. And once designers normalize a gemstone visually, consumer demand often follows faster than expected, especially among younger buyers. Many newer luxury consumers are actively avoiding jewelry that appears overly traditional or excessively flashy. Stones once considered too dark now feel modern, architectural, and intentional. In some cases, the absence of sparkle itself has become part of the appeal. That shift would have sounded absurd 20 years ago. Today, it looks increasingly realistic. At the moment, black Spinel still exists in a strange market position, familiar enough to remain affordable but emotionally disconnected from the outdated image that once limited it. And if current design trends continue accelerating toward darker, cleaner, luxury aesthetics, the stone may eventually move far beyond the pricing category most buyers still associate with it. Ranked 7th. Chrysoprase. Inside the luxury jewelry world, one of the fastest ways for a gemstone to gain attention is surprisingly simple. Buyers become bored. That cycle has repeated throughout history. Certain stones dominate for years, sometimes decades, until eventually the market begins searching for something that feels emotionally fresh again. Not necessarily rarer, not always more expensive, just different enough to signal taste before the mainstream catches up. That may be exactly where Chrysoprase is heading. At a distance, the gemstone almost looks unreal. The color sits somewhere between green apple, soft jade, and tropical water, brighter than many emeralds, but calmer and more approachable under natural light. Yet despite its appearance, Chrysoprase still exists far outside the average American luxury conversation. Most consumers barely recognize the name, and oddly enough, that may become one of its greatest strengths. Because luxury markets often reward exclusivity before they reward familiarity. Once a gemstone becomes too recognizable, it can lose the sense of discovery wealthy buyers constantly chase. Chrysoprase still feels hidden, private, slightly insider. That emotional positioning matters, especially now. Over the last several years, jewelry design has slowly drifted away from highly formal luxury aesthetics and toward something softer and more personal. Designers increasingly favor gemstones that feel organic rather than aggressively perfect. Stones with warmth, individuality, and unusual color character are becoming more desirable than gems chosen purely for prestige. Chrysoprase fits directly into that transition. The stone also performs exceptionally well in modern lighting environments. Under daylight, its color can appear almost electric. But under warmer interior lighting, restaurants, hotel bars, luxury boutiques, Chrysoprase develops a softer glow that feels expensive in a very modern way. Not cold luxury, comfortable luxury. That distinction is becoming increasingly important with younger affluent buyers in the United States. There is also a practical side to the gemstone's future potential. Compared to emerald, Chrysoprase offers a visually distinctive green at a far more accessible price point, while avoiding some of the fragility and inclusion issues that often complicate emerald jewelry. For designers trying to create larger statement pieces without entering extreme pricing territory, that flexibility creates opportunity. And opportunity tends to attract experimentation. The moment high-end brands begin treating a gemstone seriously, perception can change with surprising speed. Consumers who ignored the stone for years suddenly start seeing it differently, not because the mineral changed, but because the cultural framing around it changed first. That process may already be beginning. Right now, Chrysoprase still lives in the shadow of more famous green gemstones. But luxury trends rarely stay loyal forever. And if the market continues moving towards softer, emotionally driven aesthetics instead of traditional status symbols alone, Chrysoprase could quietly evolve from an overlooked collector stone into one of the most visually recognizable luxury greens of the next decade. Ranked 6th. Moonstone. Under certain lighting, Moonstone does something many expensive gemstones cannot. It slows people down, not with explosive brilliance or sharp flashes of color, but with movement. A soft internal glow drifting beneath the surface like light trapped inside fog. The effect is subtle enough that many first-time buyers barely notice it at all. Yet once seen properly, the gemstone becomes strangely difficult to forget. That reaction may explain why Moonstone has started quietly returning to high-end jewelry conversations after spending years trapped between two extremes: inexpensive bohemian accessories on one side and overly mystical marketing on the other. For a long time, that combination prevented the gemstone from being taken seriously in luxury markets, but cultural aesthetics have changed dramatically. Across fashion, interior design, and jewelry, modern luxury is becoming less aggressive. Consumers increasingly gravitate toward materials that feel atmospheric instead of performative. Soft textures, diffuse lighting, muted reflections, pieces designed to create mood rather than immediate visual dominance. Moonstone fits that emotional direction almost perfectly. Unlike diamonds or highly saturated gemstones engineered to command attention instantly, Moonstone rewards patience. Its beauty appears gradually as lighting shifts and viewing angles change. That slower visual experience aligns unusually well with current luxury psychology, especially among buyers seeking jewelry that feels personal rather than status-driven. And younger affluent audiences seem increasingly responsive to that distinction. The gemstone also carries a visual advantage difficult to replicate synthetically. High-quality moonstone produces a phenomenon known as a dulurescence, a floating glow that appears suspended beneath the surface of the stone itself. Under warm lighting, especially candlelight or sunset tones, the effect can become almost cinematic. On camera, it looks alive. That matters more than ever in a digital market increasingly shaped by visual storytelling and emotional aesthetics. Some gemstones impress inside a display case but lose impact online. Moonstone often does the opposite. Its glow performs exceptionally well in motion, particularly in short-form video, luxury photography, and close-up jewelry cinematography. The emotional identity surrounding the gemstone may also be evolving at the perfect time. Minimalist luxury trends are pushing buyers away from heavily traditional jewelry categories and toward stones that feel softer, rarer emotionally, and less predictable. Moonstone offers exactly that kind of experience. It feels intimate rather than corporate, elegant rather than intimidating, and importantly, it still remains relatively accessible. That combination can become extremely powerful when markets shift. Once a gemstone begins connecting with a new generation emotionally, pricing sometimes changes long before the broader public fully notices the transition happening. At the moment, Moonstone is still widely underestimated because too many consumers associate it with lower-end spiritual jewelry trends from the past. But if luxury continues moving toward atmosphere, softness, and emotional texture instead of pure visual dominance, Moonstone may eventually become one of the defining gemstones of the next aesthetic era. Ranked 5th. Sunstone. Luxury trends rarely announce themselves loudly at the beginning. They appear quietly, almost accidentally, through color palettes, materials, and subtle shifts in taste that most people ignore until the movement is already everywhere. And one of the clearest examples emerging right now can be seen in the growing obsession with warmth. Warm metals, warm interiors, warm lighting, warm earth tones. For years, the jewelry industry leaned heavily toward colder luxury aesthetics. Icy diamonds, sharp white gold, ultra-clean brilliance designed to communicate precision and status immediately. But that visual language has started softening. Increasingly, affluent buyers are gravitating toward materials that feel richer emotionally rather than simply more expensive visually. That change may place Sunstone in an unexpectedly powerful position. At first glance, Sunstone does not always look extraordinary. In lower grades, some pieces appear almost understated compared to highly saturated sapphires or emeralds. Yet high-quality Sunstone possesses something much rarer than brightness: atmosphere. Inside the stone, tiny mineral inclusions can create flashes of coppery light known as aventurescence. Under movement, the gemstone almost seems to glow from within, producing warm reflections that resemble sunlight hitting metal dust suspended in glass. The effect feels alive, and unlike the colder brilliance associated with traditional luxury gemstones, Sunstone creates emotional warmth, something modern jewelry trends increasingly value. That distinction matters more than it may seem, because today's luxury market is becoming deeply tied to lifestyle identity. Consumers no longer buy jewelry purely to signal wealth. They buy pieces that match a personal aesthetic, natural, grounded, sophisticated, without appearing overly formal. Sunstone aligns perfectly with that emotional territory, especially as quiet luxury continues influencing American fashion and design culture. The gemstone also benefits from timing in another important way. Earth tone palettes are expanding across nearly every premium category. Automotive interiors, luxury hotels, furniture design, even high-end technology products are increasingly embracing copper, amber, bronze, caramel, and champagne tones. Jewelry trends historically absorb those same visual movements shortly afterward, and Sunstone naturally lives inside that exact color world. Some varieties, particularly copper-bearing material, already display visual qualities that feel remarkably modern under contemporary lighting and photography. In motion, the gemstone produces an almost cinematic shimmer that performs exceptionally well in digital media, especially close-up video where warm reflections create depth that many traditional gemstones cannot easily replicate. Yet despite all of this, Sunstone remains surprisingly overlooked by mainstream buyers. That disconnect may not last forever, because markets often move aggressively once a gemstone suddenly fits the emotional direction of luxury culture. And among the stones still sitting below the radar today, Sunstone may be one of the most perfectly positioned for a world increasingly drawn toward warmth, texture, and understated radiance instead of cold perfection alone. Ranked fourth, Labradorite. Almost every gemstone collector has experienced the same moment with Labradorite. At first, the stone appears dull, gray, sometimes even lifeless under flat lighting. Then suddenly, with a slight movement of the hand, an electric flash explodes across the surface. Deep blue, neon gold, violent green, sometimes all at once. The transformation feels so dramatic that it almost looks artificial, as if light itself has been trapped beneath layers of dark stone. That optical effect is known as labradorescence, and it may become one of the most commercially important visual phenomena in future jewelry design, because labradorite succeeds in an area where many traditional luxury gemstones struggle: memorability. Modern consumers are exposed to endless visual content every day. Diamonds still communicate status, but they rarely surprise people anymore. Labradorite does. The gemstone creates motion, unpredictability, and visual tension, qualities that perform extraordinarily well in digital media, especially among younger audiences increasingly influenced by cinematic aesthetics and high-contrast visual storytelling. In other words, Labradorite was almost designed for the modern internet era. Yet despite its visual power, the gemstone still carries a relatively low market reputation compared to more established luxury stones. Many buyers continue associating it with artisan jewelry, independent craft markets, or lower-priced bohemian fashion accessories. That perception has kept prices surprisingly restrained, considering how visually unique the stone actually is. But perception in luxury markets can change extremely quickly once designers start reframing a material, and that process may already be underway. Over the last several years, luxury fashion has gradually moved toward individuality and emotional texture rather than traditional perfection. Consumers increasingly seek materials that feel distinctive, atmospheric, and slightly unpredictable. Labradorite delivers exactly that experience. No two stones behave identically under light, which gives jewelry pieces a more personal and almost interactive quality. That uniqueness matters, especially as mass-produced luxury becomes less emotionally satisfying for many affluent buyers. Labradorite also benefits from one enormous advantage: scale. Large pieces remain relatively accessible compared to premium transparent gemstones, allowing designers to create bold statement jewelry with dramatic visual impact without entering extreme pricing territory. Under professional lighting, especially in motion, the stone can appear almost futuristic. That visual identity is becoming increasingly valuable. In luxury design, emotional reaction often matters more than technical rarity, and few gemstones create a stronger immediate reaction than a dark stone suddenly igniting with color in someone's hand. The effect feels mysterious, expensive, and strangely cinematic all at once. Right now, much of the jewelry market still underestimates labradorite because the stone exists outside traditional prestige categories. But if future luxury continues moving toward emotional visuals, movement-based beauty, and individuality over classical status symbols, Labradorite may eventually become one of the defining aesthetic gemstones of the next decade. Ranked third, Andalusite. Not every gemstone announces its value immediately. Some stones demand patience, attention, a willingness to notice details most people walk past without ever seeing. Andalusite belongs entirely to that category, and that may be precisely why the gemstone is becoming increasingly interesting to experienced collectors watching the future direction of luxury very carefully. At first glance, Andalusite can appear almost understated. In certain lighting, the colors seem muted. Earthy greens, bronze tones, flashes of gold or reddish-brown. Nothing about it screams for attention the way sapphires or emeralds traditionally do. But the moment the stone begins to move under light, something unusual happens. The colors shift. Not dramatically like some heavily marketed color-change gems, but subtly, intelligently, almost like different layers of the stone are revealing themselves one angle at a time. This optical behavior, known as pleochroism, gives Andalusite a complexity that cameras often struggle to fully capture in still images. In person, however, the effect feels sophisticated in a way many brighter gemstones do not. And that distinction matters more than ever, because luxury culture is quietly evolving away from obviousness. Increasingly, affluent buyers are becoming attracted to materials that communicate refinement through nuance rather than visual dominance. Quiet tailoring replaced oversized logos. Textured interiors replaced polished excess. The same emotional movement is beginning to appear inside jewelry. Andalusite fits directly into that shift. The gemstone feels mature, controlled, understated in a deliberate way. Instead of demanding attention instantly, it rewards closer inspection, which psychologically creates a very different relationship between the buyer and the object itself. In high-end markets, that slower discovery process often becomes part of the luxury experience. There is also another reason the stone may be positioned unusually well for the next decade: color fatigue. Many luxury buyers are growing increasingly accustomed to seeing the same gemstone palettes repeated endlessly across jewelry collections. Bright blue sapphires, deep red rubies, traditional emerald greens. Andalusite escapes that familiarity completely. Its earthy transitional tones feel almost cinematic under modern lighting, especially when paired with brushed gold, bronze settings, or darker contemporary metals. That visual versatility gives designers room to experiment, and once designers begin building emotional identity around a gemstone, market perception can shift rapidly, especially in an era where individuality is becoming more valuable than traditional prestige categories. Andalusite also benefits from something difficult to manufacture artificially: subtlety. Synthetic stones often succeed at brightness and perfection, but they struggle to replicate the layered emotional complexity that makes natural Andalusite visually interesting in motion. The gemstone feels organic, imperfect, and intelligent all at once. Today, Andalusite still sits far outside mainstream jewelry awareness. Many consumers have never even heard the name. But luxury markets have a long history of rediscovering understated materials precisely when culture becomes tired of excess. And when that rediscovery begins, quiet stones sometimes become the most powerful ones in the room. Ranked second, Spessartine Garnet. Fire has always fascinated luxury markets. Not only literal fire, but the illusion of it. Glowing amber whiskey under dim lighting, molten reflections inside expensive watches, copper tones flickering across polished interiors. For years, jewelry trends focused heavily on colder forms of beauty: icy diamonds, crisp white brilliance, sharp blue sapphires designed to communicate precision and status instantly. But cultural taste is changing, and few gemstones are positioned more perfectly for that transition than Spessartine Garnet. At first glance, the stone almost seems too warm to be taken seriously. Some pieces glow with deep orange tones resembling burnt honey or liquid copper. Others carry flashes of ember-like light that feel more cinematic than traditional. In older jewelry eras, colors like these were often dismissed as seasonal, overly bold or difficult to style compared to safer prestige stones. Now those same colors are becoming luxury. Across high-end fashion and interior design, warmth has returned aggressively. Bronze metals, amber lighting, cognac leather, sunset palettes, dark caramel textures. The emotional atmosphere surrounding modern luxury has become noticeably richer and more intimate. Instead of looking cold and untouchable, expensive products increasingly aim to feel immersive and human. Spessartine Garnet naturally belongs inside that world. Under controlled lighting, the gemstone develops an almost molten appearance. Unlike stones that produce hard flashes of brilliance, spessartine seems to radiate heat from within. The orange tones shift between gold, copper, and deep tangerine depending on movement and environment, creating visual depth that cameras capture exceptionally well in cinematic close-up footage. That matters more than ever, because modern gemstone demand is increasingly influenced by emotional visuals rather than traditional gem hierarchy alone. A stone that creates a strong emotional reaction online can suddenly gain momentum far faster than markets expect. And visually, Spessartine Garnet has a major advantage. Almost nothing else looks quite like it. The gemstone also occupies an unusual market position psychologically. It remains unfamiliar enough to feel exclusive, yet recognizable enough that buyers do not find it intimidating. That balance is incredibly valuable in luxury spaces. Consumers often gravitate toward materials that feel distinctive without appearing completely disconnected from established taste. Spessartine fits that category perfectly. There is another reason collectors have started paying closer attention to it: saturation fatigue. Many affluent buyers are becoming increasingly exhausted by seeing the exact same gemstone colors repeated endlessly across luxury jewelry collections. Orange gemstones remain relatively uncommon in mainstream fine jewelry, which gives spessartine a visual freshness many traditional stones no longer possess. And freshness drives attention. Today, much of the market still treats Spessartine Garnet as a niche collector stone rather than a serious luxury category. But if warm-tone aesthetics continue dominating fashion, interiors, and jewelry through the end of the decade, that perception may begin changing very quickly. Because sometimes the next major luxury gemstone is not the rarest one in the room, just the one whose color finally arrived at the perfect moment. In first place, Jade. Western luxury markets may have spent decades misunderstanding jade, not because the gemstone lacked value, but because many buyers were trained to measure luxury through a very specific lens: brilliance, transparency, and aggressive visual impact. Diamonds sparkled harder. Sapphires appeared richer under showroom lighting. Rubies carried stronger auction headlines. Compared to those stones, jade often seemed strangely quiet, too smooth, too simple, sometimes even ordinary. That assumption created one of the most fascinating disconnects in the entire gemstone world, because outside much of the Western market, jade has never been treated as ordinary at all. In parts of Asia, particularly China, the gemstone occupies an entirely different psychological category, one connected not only to wealth but to history, status, protection, family legacy, and cultural identity. Exceptional jade pieces have sold for astonishing prices for years, often quietly, without attracting the same mainstream media attention surrounding diamonds or colored gemstones in Western auction culture. And that gap in perception may become increasingly important by 2030. Global luxury markets are changing rapidly. Wealth distribution is shifting. Younger international buyers are entering high-end jewelry spaces with completely different cultural reference points than previous generations. Many are less emotionally attached to traditional Western prestige stones and far more interested in materials carrying deeper symbolic or historical meaning. Jade benefits enormously from that transition, especially because high-quality jade possesses a visual quality modern luxury increasingly values: serenity. Unlike gemstones built around sharp flashes of brilliance, fine jade creates depth through texture, glow, and surface softness. The best material almost appears illuminated from inside, producing a smooth internal luminosity that feels calm rather than aggressive. In a world becoming visually louder every year, that restraint can feel extraordinarily expensive. And importantly, genuine high-grade jade is far rarer than many consumers realize. Top-quality material with strong translucency, rich color saturation, and clean texture has become increasingly difficult to source consistently. Yet, despite those supply realities, large parts of the Western public still mentally categorize jade alongside decorative carvings or inexpensive tourist jewelry. That perception keeps many buyers from understanding how competitive the high-end jade market has already become internationally. But markets eventually notice where serious money moves, and luxury history repeatedly shows that once Western demand fully recognizes a gemstone category already respected elsewhere, pricing can accelerate extremely quickly. The same pattern has appeared in art, watches, furniture, and collectible design markets throughout the last century. Jade may be approaching a similar moment now, not because the gemstone suddenly changed, but because the world around it did. Today, many consumers still walk past jade without a second glance, assuming the stone belongs to another era or another culture entirely. Yet by the end of this decade, that same gemstone could become one of the clearest examples of how global luxury taste quietly transformed while much of the market was still looking in the wrong direction. The gemstone market rarely changes overnight. At first, the shift is almost invisible. A few designers start using different colors. Collectors quietly move toward unfamiliar stones. Luxury aesthetics begin drifting away from what once defined status. Then eventually, the rest of the market notices, usually after prices already changed, and that may be exactly what is happening now. Some of the gemstones on this list still sit in ordinary jewelry cases today. A few are massively underestimated. Others are hidden behind outdated reputations the market has not fully questioned in decades. But luxury history shows something fascinating. Once cultural taste evolves, cheap-looking stones can become surprisingly expensive very quickly. Not because the minerals changed, because perception did. And over the next several years, that shift may completely reshape which gemstones define modern luxury. Which gemstone on this list feels the most underrated right now? And which one still makes absolutely no sense to the market today?